Hey, welcome back, everybody. Thanks for sticking around. We're here talking Iran, foreign policy, Ira Glass.
With who?
Our good friend of the show, Rabbi David Kaufman, is here with us every time. Okay, I guess we're just going to do that now. All right. But no, Doc, you had some thoughts.
I'm 12 or 6.
I know.
See,
that thing, you see me fiddling with that thing the whole time.
Oh, it's addictive.
Yeah, you had some thoughts about the broader implications of this. What other countries stand to gain, why they're throwing their support behind it, why they kind of, I feel like the Europeans were insisting on something being done because, like you said, they were going to, they want into Iran.
They're financial issues. I mean, Europe is struggling in a lot of ways,
Mm-hmm.
and particularly France had interest in Germany had interest in business opportunities with Iran. It's a new market that has oil. I mean, so once that oil comes online, that's a lot of income that they can spend on all kinds of things. And, while we can argue about what percentage of the money is going to go to what, a significant percentage of the money is going to go to normal stuff. So if you're the one who's building the bridges and roads and doing the plumbing and providing the dishwashers and, all of that stuff, that's a lot of business. And it can sustain a large number of companies for a good number of years. And, if you're struggling with your 1% margin to pay your workers, having a sudden 10% bump isn't a bad thing, right?
It definitely can help for sure. But Doc, do you have articulable concerns about what like China and Russia stand to gain from this, because they're behind it 100%? Well, I think they're
yeah. Sorry, go ahead. Well, China, they're actually taking over what our role was for a long time, and that's merchant to the world. So that's how I see them developing. They just want to do business with everybody. Mm-hmm. The more people you do business with, the less impact any particular thing has to do. Number two, I think the Russians want to do business in Iran because they are desperate for business. Their economy is in shambles. They're getting down to where, they're not even allowing shampoo and soap into the country in order to boost their own stuff. And three, let's face it, the Europeans aren't truly our allies. I mean, Great Britain is. They've always stuck with us, but the Europeans are, they're kind of wishy-washy after the wall fell. And they're wanting to do business there because their economy is hurting, just like the rabbi pointed out. And particularly with Greece and Turkey are both willing to dance with the devil, if you want to, so to speak, with the Russians. And what better way to do that than to have the Russians come in, pipe their have drilling contracts there, because they, Lukoil and I think it's Gazprom, are giant conglomerates based in Russia, and they would love to have that oil money flowing somewhere. Because, like I tell young docs all the time, sign up for Medicare and Medicaid because something is better than nothing. And that might be where they're coming from. The other thing is if we think that the Russians haven't been dealing with the Iranians before now, that's just naivete. The Russians have dealt with them despite the sanctions. They have a history of that. They were dealing with the Iraqis despite the sanctions there. That's why I think it's a straightforward. And the last reason is, what better way to stick it in America's eye than to go, listen, we're going to deal with your enemy. And in the process, we have the ability now to put our bases in close to threaten your primary ally, Israel. I mean, that's for me, that's how I see it on a geopolitical scale.
Yeah, I mean, I think as far as Russia's concerned, you had mentioned, the Cold War was. I don't think there's a was there. I think the Cold War is back on, and it's not a Cold War anymore to a certain extent on dealing with Putin.
Lefty. I tell him that.
Well,
all the time.
I mean, it's different. It's a different animal now because it's not the same setup of nations anymore. But the reality is that Russia's trying to grow its influence again. And Russia is also concerned about Sunni militants on its southern front, and having the Shia as an ally there makes a big difference for Russia. Having a strong Syrian government and having and having Iran as allies gives Iran a way to fight against the Shia without fighting against the Shia itself. And so I think it makes a significant amount of sense for Russia. That's a major concern for Russia. And I do think there is merit to the fact that Russia doesn't necessarily want Iran to have nuclear weapons either, because Iran I don't think is trusted by anybody. I don't think Iran is trusted by their friends or their allies. And Iran could well be willing to test a nuclear weapon against the Russians by just letting the Chechens use it. But China? I wanted to talk about China really quick. I think China's financial situation is such that keeping oil prices low is a big deal, and having new markets of resources is a big deal. I mean, I think China was probably hoping that this agreement happened before their economy tanked. And there's also a desire that China had to have the yuan be the world currency instead of the dollar.
Right.
And it could well be that the United States had to get through this deal in order to avoid that happening also.
Well, one of the things that concerns me is just we haven't even got this thing official yet because it has to go through the Congress. But when you have your major, allies, so to speak, suddenly going to your historical archenemy, the Russians, right? You have Saudi Arabia making outward gestures. Hey, listen, we want to do that. The people that are still left in Iraq are going, well, yeah, we want to work with the Russians. When you have the Turks and the Greeks going, well, hold on, look at this deal with Iran. We want to work with the Russians. At some point, you have to stop and go, what is this deal worth? I mean, if you're going to alienate your allies over there, is this deal really worth having? Real quick, we got about 30 seconds.
Well, I think that the United States is in a situation in which it's going to have to reach out to its allies to appease them to a certain extent, make them feel more comfortable, which Israel's worried about, because that means empowering all of Israel's traditional enemies. Right, those Arab powers are Israel's traditional enemies, which is another reason Israel sees this as a dangerous agreement.
All right. Well, we want to thank Rabbi David Kaufman for coming in. We're going to finish up this last segment where hopefully we'll get some more great information. We want to thank all of our sponsors, and especially you, the listener, because we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you. Bertrosian Associates, Lubinas Law Firm, Halo Capital, Des Moines Interest Rates, Des Moines Anesthesia PC at 515-574-6442. They have offices here in Des Moines and in Fort Dodge. They do pain management as well as anesthesia. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and go read our blogs on docandlefty.com. We will be back right after this break.